The next speaker is going to be Juana Alicia Ruiz Hernandez, one of the tejedoras de Mampujan that the Colombian ambassador introduced in his welcome message. Juana, who's presenting from Colombia.
Okay, good day to all of you. God bless you. For me, it's an enormous honor and pleasure to be able to share my experience with you and represent the group of women that I represent. Thank you for this honor. My name is Juana Alicia Ruiz. I am a rural woman from Colombia. I live in the mountains of Colombia, close to the city of Cartagena, a very touristic city. And I understand that I have limited time now, so I will summarize. Can you hear me? Yes? Okay, perfect. So life for us when we were young was very difficult because we had to live through several different kinds of conflict here in Colombia. From the age of 6, in my case, I have suffered all kinds of violence, sexual violence, political violence, and physical armed violence. But the important thing is that we have found a way to get past that. And we received the Global Peace Award here in Colombia. This is a great recognition for those of us in the groups that work for peace. So even though we have gone through pain and there has been a great deal of adversity, God has been good to us and has helped us to get past that pain. I'd like to present this piece to you that you can see on the slide. This is sewn cloth on cloth, where we tell of the memories and the stories of our people. This is a technique to transmit people's feelings and emotions. And first we draw on paper and then it's passed on to cloth on cloth. Each piece creates an image and then we place it on the patchwork. This has a therapeutic effect because it allows us to process and have a voice for those who don't have a voice, that have been silenced. And then also to be able to take these thoughts and these wounds and all of these emotions and place them on this canvas. And this is where we can express our memory. This is the final product. So this is the first point of the peace agreements in Colombia that was signed between Colombia's government and the FARC guerrilla. So as I was saying, the Montes de Maria, which is where I'm from, is a very large area. There are 15 different municipalities there. So it's 15 different areas, and it's a very rich land, very fertile, but there are many poor there because for many years, the rich and powerful have tried to have done a great deal of land grabbing and have wanted to keep the land to themselves. In our region, there have been 102 massacres. And in each massacre, up to 60 people could have died over a span of 1 or 2 days. Many women were victims of sexual violence, and many families were broken apart, and an uncountable number of displaced persons. In my community, Mampujan, in the year 2000, 255 families were displaced from Mampujan, and many women suffered sexual violence. Mampujan is also a rural community, so we grow what we eat and what the city eats as well. Most of the eggs eaten in the city and the grains and the vegetables and cereal comes from our community and from our region. So our region and our land is a land that the powerful wish to have in order to change the way we grow crops and turn this land into monoculture crops. There is a type of wood called teca, and the oil palm is another one that they're interested in growing teak, as well as the oil palm. So in this context of violence and pain, where there were massacres and displacements and sexual abuse to scare us, to harass us, and to make us flee to the city, this is where our group came about, Tejedoras de Mampuhan, that I represent. Tejiendo sueños y sabores de paz, or weaving dreams and the flavor of peace. After 5 years of displacement, this came about because there were still massacres taking place, threats, and fear and insecurity in my region. So we decided to group together to heal these wounds that are left after war for women. Women are affected in a different way as a result of conflict and war. When there's conflict, a group comes to intimidate and they set women apart. And women are often the loot of war. Women are abused to be able to threaten men, to communicate a message of power to families and all of those who wish to counter that violence and war. So 245 families were displaced in the worst way possible. They used the tools for working in the countryside to massacre these peasants. They were tied and eaten by dogs that they would bring in order to inspire fear. And in this terrible situation, we were brave enough to come together and invite these families to heal their wounds and their pain, to encourage them to not leave the countryside, to not flee, but also to have a strategy to be able to stay alive, even in the midst of this violence.
Y toda esta dinámica lo que permitiera hacer catarsis, o sea, que nosotras pudiéramos.
So this situation led to catharsis, allowing us to heal our minds, as well as to express what was happening so that today people like you can find out what was happening. People like you could know that in Colombia there was a war and that human rights were violated. And international organizations were able to enter, and many international organizations arrived, such as the UNDP, the Department of Justice of the US Embassy, and there was a meeting between victims and perpetrators, and justice was found. Perpetrators were imprisoned, and they had to pay time in prison, and we received compensation and continue fighting for our families and for them to be, for people to be able to heal their wounds so they can be strong and resilient, and that we can continue in peace resisting in our region. So for us, it has been very important for international organizations and the international community to be present, because this has protected us. And so much as we as social leaders have been accompanied by international organizations, it ensures that we are not victims, as many other social leaders have been victims. They have died in this new wave of violence. Colombia signed a peace agreement in the year 2005 with the AUCE, the paramilitary groups. In 2016, an agreement was signed with the long-standing guerrilla, the FARC. But nonetheless, there have been approximately 104 rural social leaders and urban social leaders that have been assassinated. Human rights defenders have been assassinated throughout Colombia. So by having the international community present, it's a form of protection, because at least this is something that is known. Thank you very much for your time, for listening to me. Could you pass the remaining slides very quickly? The most beautiful thing here is that the youth you can see in this picture continues working, and this will be passed on through the generations. We have not been silenced. We continued working, and with the hope that Our generations will not be massacred. They will not become victims, and we will continue living in the countryside in our region. Thank you very much.